Right, and toward the end, I mean, David Gilmour said that at certain sessions and recording moments, he felt almost there wasn't any point turning up because you were so controlling.
You are such a stirrer. I'm not going there. That's it. I'm not going any further.
So I think it's fair to say there was a little bit of falling out, wasn't there? You fell out with Dave Gilmour, didn't you, about Comfortably Numb? So folklore has it. And is it true that you had a bit of a stand-up row in a North Hollywood restaurant over that?
I don't remember that, no.
Well, funnily enough, I'd already had songs on the first album and on the second album when Sid was still there. So it may have been that my nascent need to express my feelings may have risen to the surface, but not in the way that it did, because it had to fill in all the space.
You know, so we all tried to write songs, as well, all of it, well, apart from Nick, obviously.
And that's obviously what caused all the trouble in the band, is that it's all strong stuff, and it didn't sit well with the rest of them.
You've said of yourself, I know I can be an oppressive personality because I bubble with ideas. It was easier for the others to go along with me. So I'm wondering at what point you realised, whilst you were making music with Pink Floyd, that it doesn't quite feel as good as it once felt, that personalities were rubbing abrasively up against each other.
I think, and it's not just me, I think everybody would agree, it was really immediately after Dark Side of the Moon. So we would argue furiously about almost everything.
From then on, you said, we clung together more out of fear than hope.
Right. Well, that's my opinion.
So was it all a downward slide from Dark Side of the Moon?
Well, no, of course not. Because if you look at what we did together, uncomfortable as it was to be in that relationship where we were no longer four guys in a garage, but basically we were a real group, four guys driven by the ambition of making it. With Dark Side of the Moon we made it, and those ambitions ceased to be quite as important as they were.
I mean, that is very honest, but it's leaving me thinking, what kind of life can it have been for more than a decade, creating with these guys, living side by side with them, and let's be honest, particularly maybe David Gilmour more than anybody, living side by side, working together, and actually rubbing each other up the wrong way, having a deteriorating relationship, and, excuse my language, pissing each other off. I mean, it must have been a very weird life.
Well, we didn't live side by side. You know, outside of working hours, we never saw each other.
Really?
No.
Because what, you couldn't stand the sight of each other after a while?
No, we could stand the sight of each other because, you know, in fact, as became increasingly clear as the years went by, we didn't have all that much in common. But we did work well together. I mean, the work that we did together through, in spite of the fact, you know, that we're not blood brothers, was remarkable.
There's an awful lot of we in Nick's book that I didn't recognise as being kind of in line with the reality of what actually went on. Funnily enough, there was a lot, in the original version that I read, there was a lot of we wrote cards out, and we did this and we did that. Well, I don't remember much we about this. And that's what I remember. But, you know, we all have very different memories of life, and we know that the human memory is a very unreliable and idiosyncratic device. And we also know now that we know for sure, because of experiments that have been done, that the human brain will invent memories that suit the ego of the person who owns the brain.
It's interesting because with respect, you, over years since, you have talked about the fact that, you know, you felt the songwriting, frankly, was more and more being yours, you know, that you felt they weren't contributing very much. And there was, I think, toward the end...
It wasn't something I felt. Those are the facts.
Ezrin has lied through his fucking teeth about it for years and years. Ezrin waxes eloquent in interviews that he's done since about how incredible it was that David did it in one take and how moving it is and universal and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and on and on and on. The only problem with that story is he wasn't there. Bob Ezrin was not in the studio when Dave did that. Guthrie was there, James Guthrie, and David did umpteen takes, and then he went away, and James Guthrie edited the best bits of all the takes and stuck it together.
Looking back, do you think there is some truth in the caricature of you as being a control freak, domineering, and just trying too much, too often to drive the band exactly where you wanted it to go?
Yes. Yes and no. I may have been domineering, but you either have ideas or you don't. And if you do have ideas, you can't be expected to sit on them like that, you know, just because somebody else isn't having ideas.
Right, and toward the end, I mean, David Gilmour said that at certain sessions and recording moments, he felt almost there wasn't any point turning up because you were so controlling.
You are such a stirrer. I'm not going there. That's it. I'm not going any further. We had a great career together. It was fantastic. I look back upon it with huge pride, or, you know, but with a great feeling that, wow, and almost of surprise that we managed somehow to create this great work. And I'm not going to apportion plaudits or blame to anybody.
Why don't we deal right now at the top of the show so that we can get it out of the way, so to speak, with Pink Floyd. What is the status? And then we'll move on from there.
It's over, I think.
Just that simple. It's over. You can call it part of your past now.
Yeah. Other people, I think, have other opinions about it, but you'd have to speak to them.
Was leaving Pink Floyd simply something you had to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, only because we'd been working together very successfully, right, for 20 years. But, you know, people grow in different ways and we change as the years go by. And the time had come where we had diverged musically and philosophically and maybe politically as well. And so I needed to get out from underneath that umbrella. And
did you feel shell-shocked to any extent at the end of it all? No, I didn't. No.
Now, tell me, Roger, what's going to happen to the Pink Floyd in the future?
Your guess is as good as mine. My guess would be not very much. But I don't know. You never know. You never know with these things.
Regrets about the way you left? It was a big story at the time, as you know.
Well, yeah, there was a big story. Let me say this. I, at the time, thought that as there was only going to be 2 people left from the original band, that maybe the band was done.
Well, you know, if Ringo and George reformed and called themselves the Beatles, I personally would be extremely upset, because there are millions and millions of children out there who go, oh, the Beatles are coming to town, wahoo, let's go and buy tickets. Or, oh, look, a Beatles album's coming out, well, let's go and buy it. That's all, and that's exploitation, and I think it's wrong.
I've been very pleased up here in Canada that the press has come, the press I've seen so far anyway, has come down solidly in my camp. And there are 2 camps. It's a fundamental moral issue as to whether or not one guy should be allowed to call himself Pink Floyd, you know, and which is what Dave's doing, because although Nick still owns half of the outfit, he really has very little to do with it. And I think it's wrong. I think that the name pertained to a band, and it was a good band, and it did some good work, and that band is now defunct. And I think it's wrong of him to be going around pretending to be that band, because he isn't.
Sorry to interrupt, because this is so interesting for so many people around the world who know the band and know the story of the band and all the rancor that came out in '85 when you walked away, and then there was, I think, 2 years of legal battles because you didn't want the Pink Floyd name and the Pink Floyd act to continue. You felt that was wrong, given that you'd walked away from the band.
I did think that was wrong.
And the acrimony, there were many words that passed between you and Dave Gilmour, many of them unpleasant. And I'm wondering now, with a bit of perspective, how you look back on that period when it all blew up in your face.
I famously thought that we should retire, and they famously didn't. But
where people have got the wrong end of the stick, because it got reported, is the idea that we fought about this in court. We never went anywhere near a court.
But lawyers were involved, let's say.
Lawyers advised both of us, you know.
I could remember how it had been years before, when we were kind of overtaken by the numbers, and before those connections that we made were obliterated by the weight of numbers.
Right. And they said, listen, you can't retire the name. You can fight to get it for yourself, and you probably get it. And I went, I don't want it. And they said, this is a valuable piece of property. So you can't just say, I've decided to throw it away. Right. It's worth money, so it has to exist. And I was wrong.
Were you?
Of course I was. Who cares? It was a commercial decision. You know, and in fact, it's one of the few times that the legal profession has taught me something. Because when I went to these chaps and said, listen, this isn't Pink Floyd anymore. They went, well, what do you mean? That's irrelevant. It is a label, and it has commercial value. You can't say it can cease to exist. You obviously haven't looked back to Runnymede, and you obviously don't understand English jurisprudence. You know, it's not about what you think it's about, it's what it is. As it turns out, I discovered that people are only interested in property, and the name Pink Floyd was extremely valuable. So when I said this to lawyers, they said to me, are you insane? Nobody cares a damn about that. You cannot retire. You cannot take a decision to take something that's valuable and retire it. And I went, oh, okay, thank you. So that was the end of it.